Hello and welcome to Legendary Green Team, where we talk about books and other speculative fiction and other stuff that the Legendary haven't got around to yet, or won't to, or stuff that we just want to talk about. My name is Huron Fan, and I'm joined today with Kip,
Hello.
Ash,
Hey.
and Wombat.
Hello, hello.
We are going to talk to the titles. Y'all should know this, but we're going to talk about Book 3 of the Book of the New Sun, also known as Sword of the Lictor. Shall we? I can't imagine anyone's listening to this without having read the book or
Really?
actually cares about spoilers.
Because I feel like there's going to be plenty of people listening to this who want to pretend like they've read the Book of the New Sun, but never have.
Okay, well, should we do a non-spoiler section?
Sure.
Okay.
How?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I liked this book.
As the kids say, like the vibes continue. It hasn't really changed much in terms of opacity or
Pointedness.
difficulty.
I think
or
this one's probably more clear than the
Severianness.
first two books.
I think it's only clear because you become used to what's going on.
You learn how to
And
read the book, yeah.
You've only learned how to read the book, and you've gotten used to Severian and his quirkiness, and you know what to expect. You got stories within stories. You got weird stuff happening that you don't really know why, hoping to get context later. You got, yeah.
You got Severian reflecting upon it's lots of reflections upon reality and musings on metaphysics and whatnot.
Nerd stuff.
Yeah.
You start to learn which Latin words you have to look up and which you can just ignore because they come in lists. And you also learn to stop trying to pronounce them.
If like you aren't interested in the Book of the New Sun after reading the first two books, I doubt this one will change your mind.
Yes.
I suppose it has more action.
It's maybe the most like traditional.
Yeah, I mean it definitely has, I don't know, peaks and valleys like you would expect in a regularly paced book, I suppose.
There's like a heroic climax which doesn't really exist for the first two.
Yeah.
It has one of the most obvious parallels to prior stories. Well, several really, but
Yep.
It has Severian
Especially if you know Roman
acting
history.
like a human.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's changed a lot.
Yeah, a lot. He's continuing to.
And we finally learn some things about the world. Finally.
Finally, I think we've been given bits and pieces about the world since the beginning.
Fine. We finally learn more about spaceships.
Oh,
Which is what Kip
the
cares
thing
about.
that Kip cares about. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just go into spoilers, right?
Sure. I don't know how to skirt around this anymore. Does anyone want to give a summary?
No.
Like an off-the-cuff summary?
Absolutely not.
I mean, this is the book where Severian kind of becomes a human. That'd be my summary. Severian becomes a human. He learns how to have feelings and stuff.
All right. So
Severian tries out various things with a magical artifact.
Story opens, and he is a prison warden. Dorcas is upset. Dorcas says bye-bye. He sleeps with a woman named Syriaca, falls in love, saves her, leaves the town, meets little Severian and family, gets attacked by the Alzabo. Everyone dies. He and little Severian get into a magic duel and are saved with Hathor's magic blob. Then he goes to the mountains, meets Typhon, who is an ancient king. He kills Typhon. Little Severian gets disintegrated. Then he goes to Diaturna and starts a revolution against Baldanders and Talos. Meets some aliens who are like, "We love you, Severian," and
Some really hot aliens
with multiple masks. And then
Who live
the
like
claw
dogs.
kind of gets destroyed, and that's the end, right?
I mean, you're a bit out of order with some of your events, but those
Yeah.
are all events that happen. Yeah.
Those things happened, and that's all.
I don't know.
Episode's
Did
over?
little Severian get disintegrated? I'm still on the fence about that.
I think that he's gone, but
I love the fact that he calls him big and little Severian. And that's what they call each other. It's so cute.
that is certainly one way to describe their relationship.
Wait, you didn't find their little relationship cute?
I found it confusing and sometimes uncomfortable and other times endearing, and it really just depended on where we were and what was going on.
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously Severian is relating to little Severian in ways that he hasn't seemed to be able to relate to kids, or sorry, other people before, because like he seems to see himself in little Severian. Obviously, his name is their names are the same, but also little Severian also loses his parents. He doesn't, and
I
yeah,
think
he's
I
kind
think
of crossing
Severian
a
actually
different world.
kind of like laments on that fact a little bit, like
Yeah,
this,
yeah, exactly.
but in a very Severian way. Where like, I never knew my parents. I could be his father, and then
Yeah,
sometimes
and this
not
is
even.
like him starting to process his own childhood in a way that he hasn't before. He's seeing it from a different perspective, I think.
This was a book of very high highs and very weird lows for Severian for me. Probably more than the first two. That you start out in Thrax, and then the stuff with Seriaka, and then the reveal. After he spent the night with her and all this, and the Archon has kind of let him know that there's going to be an execution, and then you find out that it's Seriaka, was kind of a gut punch.
Yep.
And then you find, like, to me, I was like, oh crap, like, but then I was like, oh, he's just gonna Severian around and just let her die or whatever, and then but then he's like, no, I'm totally gonna just like give up everything in Thrax that I've got going on. I'm
Yeah.
gonna relinquish the torture stuff, and
I like how that reveal doesn't come till later too, because after the scene, it's like it's a big time skip, and you just assume that he did the deed, right?
yeah, and then there's a flashback.
Yeah.
Like, a couple chapters later. Yeah, it's interesting. Also, that Severian like is maybe questionable at managing a jail, because he's like, hey, here's this fatal flaw in my jail that people could get out at any time that I just happen to not tell anyone about, and I'm gonna.
I like how he escapes by killing everyone in a flood and then resurrecting them with the claw.
Yeah,
Interesting guy.
Also save those two children. That was heart-wrenching.
I think
Well,
the
that's
guild needs better training on how to resist womanly charms.
yeah, well, yeah, or just Severian in general, but
Maybe
yeah,
that's the real reason why they took women out of the guild.
he
I think it's a consequence of taking women out of the guild.
It's a
I
consequence,
agree.
but it might also be the reason why. Just there's too much fraternity, and then they just blamed it on the women.
Yeah,
They're too cruel.
I don't know. If you grew up around women who are also torturers, I feel like you might not idealize women so much.
I think he probably developed some odd paraphilias.
yeah. It's weird though, because like in the start of this one, like he helps the kids. He gives up stuff for Seriaka. He's not awful to Dorcas and her quest.
I think it's a little awful, especially the first chapter.
Well, okay. He kind of pulls it around, as she says, like, I gotta dip out. I need to find out about my life.
He's actually very gracious at that point when she's just
Yeah.
like, I need to go. I think I was once dead.
So then I'm like, yes, like Team Severian. And then we get to the house in the mountains with the Alzabo, and he's like, he has an opportunity to kind of fall on his sword and go out a hero for this family. And then he's like, yeah, that's fine, Alzabo. Like, I'll take off and you can smoke this whole family, and it's totally fine. Like, it's their fault for not.
I disagree with
the mother's fault.
I disagree with this. I think his actions with the family were actually very noble. So he tries to kill the Alzabo. He's unable to do so because he literally can't see anything, and nobody will give him any light thanks to Agia. He makes a deal with the Alzabo, but his deal has
A
what should I
loophole.
say? A loophole. Thank you. So he doesn't hunt the Alzabo, but he waits for the Alzabo to come, and he tries to protect them. I just don't know how he could have handled it better otherwise.
Not
Well,
without
let's
guarding
just-
that family with the
yeah.
rest of his life.
So I said, like, oh man, I might need to pull up that chapter in particular, because he's thinking to himself, like, oh man, I have the opportunity to do things different, right? He's left like Thrax, and he's like,
he's following them. He tries to protect them. He just fails at it.
I mean, but
He has
like,
He's
but
a failure
did he
of
try?
courage there.
What's Ash?
He has a failure of courage to protect them, which I think recognizing that is telling of his improved moral character. I think, because if he didn't feel some measure of guilt about failing there, then he just wouldn't bring it up, right? Unless he wants, unless we have an idea of Severian where he's like truly like a kind of psychopath and is just purely trying to manipulate the audience into thinking that he's better than he is, which is possible. But
I don't buy that because he has way too many failings, and he tells us too much about his failings for us. If he really just wanted to make himself look like the best person ever, we wouldn't know all this crap about him. We wouldn't judge him as harshly as we do.
right?
Yeah, he would just be for both.
No,
I
but
don't know.
like if he didn't care, he wouldn't have followed the family. That's my point. Like he felt like after he made the deal with the Alzheimer's, he could have just said, "Bye, you guys screwed yourself because you didn't give me light. Have fun fighting Alzabo." But no, what he did was he followed them without them knowing, and he waited for them to get attacked.
I feel like this is the book where Severian, his conditioning from the tower is dropping, and it results in him being a much less decisive and incisive person than he used to be.
Mm.
And
Yeah, he goes
a lot of that
to
gets told through the stories of his failures and his wiffle waffling around certain topics, and I think that's an interesting way to show personal growth is by well by being afraid of a horde of zoanthropes for the first time.
I think the most stark example is when he's at Baldander's castle, and then he sees the woman who is like basically dissected on the table, and
Yeah.
he realizes he can't look at that anymore. Something has changed. It would not have bothered him when he was a torturer, but now his mind has shifted. He's no longer a torturer. He says he's wearing a costume.
Okay, how great is it that he went to the party dressed up as a torturer, and then he's thinking in his mind, "I'm the only person here who's actually wearing a real thing, and everybody else is faking it." Even though at the
Hey,
same time
Holden.
everyone else is a phony. Even though at the same time he sees somebody dressed up as the Pellerines, he's like, "Ah, it's the Pellerines!" So he thinks
Yeah.
everybody
Well,
else
and-
is faking it except for he sees the Pellerine, and she must be real. And then
and she
during that
is
time,
somewhat real too.
yeah, that's also true. And then like he also has some thoughts about like, okay, what if God were to make everyone what they're actually dressed up as, which is a strange thing, but beside the point. And then during the party, he actually decides to stop being a torturer, and he actually becomes somebody who's pretending to be somebody else. That's so
Yes.
good.
Yes, the way that is constructed was really well done by Gene Wolfe.
Yeah. During that party is the moment when he becomes not a torturer anymore.
Yeah.
When he forsakes his guild.
Yeah.
That might
It's
actually
just-
be my favorite chapter sequence in like the whole book.
Oh, not the Alzabo?
No, I mean I like the Alzabo stuff a lot, and I can definitely see how it has probably influenced other things. But
I like Typhon.
Typhon is the one I really want to talk about because
real quick before we
I have
move on from the
theories.
party, I just want to note that I think this is another example of how in Severian's life, the symbols that he encounters shape his the direction he has in life, even if it's unintentional. So he goes to a costume party, and then the thing he is wearing becomes a costume as a result.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And my man shapes destiny.
Symbolism in a Gene Wolfe book? Never heard of it.
It's almost as if events have been set out by some master intelligence in some kind of perfect way.
I wonder if those symbols in the beginning of book 1 that he says he adopts are important.
I mean, one might say that he reconciles truth with fiction.
Yeah.
Maybe conciliator?
Maybe.
And to call back to what Dorcas said in Shadow of the Torturer, the idea that like there's a finite amount of good in the world and all you can do is tilt backwards or forwards. So if you take more evil into yourself, the world will be better as a result. I think maybe some of the events in this book could be read as Severian is tipping some evil from himself back out into the world.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't think I've had thought of it that way. This is also like kind of the area where we get some like new framing for Shadow, which I thought was pretty cool, with Dorcas kind of remembering more about her life, and how the dead had been stuffed full of lead, like lead pellets to be weighed down in the water and things like that. And so she's kind of remembering things, and It definitely makes that lake in Sword like a lot more creepy and
Mhm.
That was pretty
uncomfortable.
creepy in the first place,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
it was, but it's like, okay, like what the
Well,
heck?
yeah. Do you remember the boatman at the beginning who was looking for someone named Cass?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I appreciate there's like a lot of callbacks to the first two books in Sword. I feel like
Mhm.
We continue with water.
water is a
Yeah.
big. It's a lot of symbolism in water with water
Or
in this
rebirth.
story.
Yeah.
Life, death,
Um,
rebirth, all that.
I like how when Dorcas is telling him the story, or telling him she thinks that she was dead, he's like willfully ignorant about it until she like comes out and says it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like trying to
But
avoid it like every step of the
yeah,
way.
exactly.
Well, and this is the first and maybe only explanation of like what the claw actually is doing is right around this time in the
Well, it's
book.
certainly a theory.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's something, and it hurt my brain a little. Like a lot of things in this book. But what I thought was kind of funny later is this is like very kind of anti Sanderson type stuff where we really thought like, okay, we kind of know what the claw does. We don't know why it doesn't work sometimes. But the one thing that Severian was consistently doing was pulling it out of his pouch to use it. And then it's explicitly stated that he could use it while in the pouch.
Yep.
So we we then have zero rules or understanding of how
Yep.
the claw is used, which I thought was pretty funny.
Mhm.
I imagine to maybe a certain brand of fantasy or sci-fi reader in 2024, it would be frustrating because we're not used to authors just kind of hand waving away,
We
the
yeah.
how
It's
of
funny that you
magic.
said a certain brand of fantasy.
We assume that magic has a system to it when it may not
Yeah. And I
necessarily.
think I think that in kind of
mean,
the times we're living in, people expect that more than, when he was writing this in the 80s.
So I think that raises a question.
is there a
Does it,
system?
well, is there a system, but also does it still count as a miracle if you can do it on demand?
Does it
I
still
mean,
count as a miracle if it has like an explanation?
Yeah.
It's like
I think
the
I
Temple
think
of the
it still
Pellerines
counts
in
as a
book one.
miracle.
I think I agree with Kip. Yeah.
I think Gene Wolfe does too. Like, because in book one we see the Temple of the Pellerines lifted up, and we're just like, holy crap! This big building is floating in the air. This is a miracle. This is a symbol. I see this. And then later on, we're given several maybe explanations for how it happened. But it's not the point that we know how it happened. It's the point that maybe the end created the worlds this would happen.
Yeah. So that's kind of the point I was driving at. There, I think this is probably a conversation we should have at the end of next book. But just kind of like the train, Gene Wolfe was interested in following this train of thought and having Severian follow this train of thought to some kind of a conclusion.
Yeah. And I don't know. I think sometimes the miracle is that people choose to do good or to do something thoughtful when they could do anything else to even, So I don't know. I probably.
Is it this book where we get an explanation of from Dorcas about how the claw works?
Yeah, it is this one. And that's
Yes.
where
Do you buy it? Do you think she's right?
No.
she could be. I am on the fence because I think Gene. Well, here's what I know. I know Gene Wolfe is smarter than me, and then it certainly I think is plausible, but I don't. Something about it rings maybe not true or not wholly true to me. Why
Ash, your
though? I
opinion?
don't know. Just a gut feeling.
Do you have an opinion, Ash?
I don't think I can have an opinion without being spoilery.
Okay.
We've only got one book left, guys.
Yeah.
I don't buy it, even though I usually believe almost everything Dorcas says. And uh, Wombat and I talked about this last episode about why I think the claw didn't work on Jonas and Jolenta. And I think it's kind of related, but she says that the claw works by like changing the direction of
Changing
times, like
time.
yeah, so people go to a previous state. But like, how does that explain, like Jolenta or the beast that he tames in book two?
maybe it reminds them of the time when they were more than beasts,
But
and they
like it was,
seek to remain in that time, and that Severian is providing like a conduit for the power of the claw to manifest itself, or the claw is providing a conduit for the power of Severian to manifest itself, one or the other. um,
So is the question about the man beasts that he encounters in the
not the
vault?
band beast. I'm talking about the beast where he puts Jalenta on top of it, and it's like a
the bull of the Pampas.
yes, the bull that has testicles, and the guy's like, I can see that bull's testicles, but that's impossible.
Right. Yes. Um, I think a
Maybe
related.
it
Go
brings
ahead.
it back to a time in its childhood when it was a young and suggestible little.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I
I don't know.
think a related phenomenon that's worth thinking about is how Severian recounts the story of what happened with Apu Punchao or something. I don't remember his name.
Apu Punchao, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Apu Punchao. How they thought that they were performing necromancy, but he's
Vivamancy.
it might be vivamancy. It might be that Apu Punchao is performing some kind of act from
That was
beyond the dead
cool.
that causes people to perform necromantic rites to bring him back.
Is that so awesome?
I love that. I love that
Yeah.
idea.
Right?
I've never seen that anywhere. I'm just like, oh man, my mind's blown.
Yeah,
I'm gonna make a warlock patron in D&D. Has that concept.
that's a good concept actually. Yeah, so
So
there's something funky going on with the spirituality in these books. That yeah, like Severian is ruminating on all these events post hoc, right? And he's trying to make the pieces fit together. I'm curious, what do you guys think the pieces are going to fit together to be? If you have any ideas at all.
my
Highly drug-addled in retrospect.
He does take psychedelics in this book.
Multiple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not even gonna waste your time trying to explain it either.
Yeah. And then at some points, like it's not even that he's necessarily taking drugs. It's just that like his consciousness is in a state where he's not able to be a reliable narrator of his own events, like when he's dying from thirst or hunger.
Yep. Or when he's looking at the claw.
Mm.
Unbound by protective sapphire. Or whatever it was.
My theory is that Severian is either the conciliator or the new sun or both.
I think both.
Especially his conversation with Typhus. Typhon? Whatever.
Typhon.
Typhon.
Typhus
There's
is a
just-
disease.
Well, yeah. Well, Typhon, if he's like a physical embodiment of a disease, probably.
The scourge.
Yeah, he's a parasite. Quite literally.
Yeah. He speaks in that segment about having met the conciliator, right, and all this stuff. And I think this is the first book where I didn't like get on any Gene Wolfe spoilers or anything, but I was like, Paul Danders is an interesting name. Like let me look into some of the names, right? And then I started thinking, like, why specifically did Gene Wolfe name this series the Book of the New Sun, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's easy to say, it's because the sun is dying, but then we get all these little clues throughout the narrative that I think it's more of like a religious figure, and it actually doesn't really have anything to do with like a new sun.
So to provide you some context here,
or both.
Yeah, so
yeah.
The new sun is considered a figure that's going to save them, but also when on the way to the brothel, Severian and Draught, I think, Draught is saying that there's less food and there's going to be less food until the new sun arrives.
Yeah.
The world is going to diminish, keep on diminishing until there's some kind of rebirth.
They keep talking about the lowering of global temperatures and produce, and then Typhon just straight up gives us units for measurement for temperature drops.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, he does.
For the first time ever.
Like
I think that might be the first time that temperature gets a number in this book series.
And it's very slow too.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
But if you think about kind of like climate change now, right? Like it doesn't take a lot to have pretty outsized effects.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was fascinating.
I'm still wondering if Nessus is like a rocket engine.
Yeah, there's something spacey
If
going on with Nessus.
if the wall is the like lip of a giant thruster that moved the Earth.
The new sun will move alter the orbit of the Earth around the sun.
Maybe.
Something. So earlier
You-
you said that something
Maybe
could be
kindle
one
Jupiter into
thing
a sun.
or the other or both. I think it's a very, very, very common thing in these books is that if something can be two things at once, it will be two things at once.
Yeah,
So
I was thinking about like Severian with the claw, and he's kind of roaming around performing these miracles, of bringing people back and just weird kind of stuff. And it has like a lot of things in the Book of the New Sun so far, a lot of religious symbolism and that kind of stuff. And so I'm thinking like, the fun part of this story to me is like the mystery, right? Like the chapter after, to go back a second, the chapter after Dorcas, nopes out of the story for now. I have a feeling she'll be back next book, but we'll see. We find out that Hathor is like a ship captain, or was on a ship of some kind, like Jonas.
like in Pokemon.
Yeah, and that he's actually had these these creatures from Claw, and now, and he's it's like been chasing after Aegea and all this, and I was like, man, that's pretty crazy. But then you start thinking about like some parts of, and then later in the book, this is also confirmed with the alien people, but that like some parts of this world still have like super advanced technology that they're using, like on a really regular basis, right? We don't know how many, we have no sense of scale to that, so it's like that's why I say could be both, right? Could they actually generate a new sun, and then like is Severian maybe also this kind of religious figure in the making? Is this kind of like his origin story? That's where I land on it so far. I'm probably who knows.
Yeah, concerning the Hierodules, I'm curious what you guys make of the encounter Severian has with them. Like, why do you think that they say to them it's a farewell to him, and to him, whereas to him it's obviously the introduction?
Relativity.
What do you mean by that?
I think they're about to go off on a journey, and either they're going to die on the journey or Severian will. But they said they only live about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And an interstellar trip can easily take 20 years.
Yeah, they're wearing a mask to hide their hideous face, but underneath that itself is a mask, and underneath it's beautiful. Do you think that's the last mask they have on?
No,
my brain.
I think they are tiny little green men inside Men in Black style robotic suits.
Masks all the way down.
I think too that Gene has already probably told us that time in this world is like cyclical or not a straight line, right? Like
yeah, it's very much not a straight line.
Very much not a straight line. We have the Heron and I talked about this last episode, but the green man from early on in Claw, right? Who's like, I'm from some super far in the future thing, and my skin just uses photosynthesis to feed me and power my body, which is pretty sweet.
And Severian takes this to be some kind of proof that the new sun has arrived.
Yeah. Or, we definitely have, I think, some confirmation in this book that people are like living other places, or at least maybe other species are living other places.
Yes. And there probably are humans on other worlds as well. Yeah,
you would think. And so it's interesting. I mean, the idea that time travel is like possible, probable.
I found it interesting how Severian just like drops in the end of this book, like, oh, all energy weapons come from the Hierodules.
Yeah. and they only give humans things that are too advanced for them to replicate. So humans can't make their own energy weapons.
Yeah, and then I think this is the first time it's explicitly stated that there's like energy weapons, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of like hinted at, or
yeah, it's implied.
I mean, the pistol made a very bright flash in the first.
Yeah, like the first chapter, we see basically an energy weapon pistol from Vodalis.
Yep, and we saw that the lances or of the Ulan like glowed with energy.
And then the Kakajin / Hierodules shot at Baldanders with energy weapons.
But also that when he says things like lance, what he always means is these energy weapons, unless
Yep.
he's specifying otherwise.
Yeah.
Because when there's the battle with the magicians, he says, "Oh, there's these spears that are aimed at me that like the lances that the soldiers use, but these are primitive ones that don't fire energy bolts, basically."
That major tool is so weird. I want to
Yeah.
step back a little bit. So back to the new Sun talk. I would not be surprised in the least if Gene Wolfe's idea for this book was like, okay, what if Jesus came again? He'd be like a new Son of God. He's like, wait, Son.
Sun.
Oh, Son,
Hmm.
S-U-N. Oh, I could probably do something with that.
And his brain grew 3 sizes that day. When it comes to the magician's duel, I thought that the rationalization Severian had for magic afterwards was super fascinating. The idea that the entire universe is one long word spoken by the Increate, and that magic is the words that are unspoken.
Something I loved about that part was he kept explaining to Little Severian, this isn't real. This is just magic tricks. And like everything he'd been telling Little Severian up until that point is just basically like him definitively saying something and then later getting disproven. He's like, well, it's fine.
Yeah, and he's thinking to himself, yeah, I'm really not sure about this.
I mean, the two witches disagreed on the definition of magic, and they're like, magic is anything that's not real,
Yeah, and then it's like, well,
and therefore it doesn't
because
exist. No such thing.
yes. There are so many dualities within this series that create interesting tensions. I think it's a great way to explore theme. Especially
Movies.
so another interesting duality I think is Severian as a man of faith versus Baldanders as a man of science.
Yeah, that was beaten over my head at the end.
I like the bit about Talos saying, we, the master and his creator being such a powerful symbol, we are such a powerful symbol that we, our mythology and our symbolism traveled through time, and we inspired other stories like Frankenstein or
Yeah.
Like I said, beating you over the
Talos.
head.
Oh, it's great.
Talos.
And the kind of unexpected Baldanders was a tiny guy once.
Yeah,
It's like a
Yeah.
midget, but then he
many years ago.
He
just
was
started
Bean.
growing. Yeah, maybe.
What did you guys make of? And maybe I focused on this because it to me, but he forsakes his status in the guild as a torturer, and then a few times throughout the narrative is like, I'm Master Severian.
Grandmaster Severian at the end.
Grandmaster Severian, and he keeps changing his, how he's presenting. Do you think that was just like a tactical decision? Like,
I think it shows how much he doesn't care about the guild anymore.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. I think he's just using the guild as a means to then like if he could claim to be this important person in the guild, he could get like food and water, for example.
Yeah. Okay. That's how I kind of read it, but I was like, I wonder if Gene was going for something more with that.
He probably
probably
is, and I
was.
just missed it.
Remember, originally he refused to accept the Archon's elevation of him to master.
Correct. Yeah.
He kept correcting him and being like, they will not elevate me. I am a journeyman. I am blah, blah, blah. And then he forsakes his torturer's duty. And then all of a sudden he's much more free with what he's called.
And it is in this book that we get to hear part of the deep secret of the torturers that he was told. And the secret being that the torturers are the only ones that can be said to obey, because they're the ones that do things without question, and they do the worst things without question.
Yep.
Not exactly noble.
Yeah, it's not necessarily noble, but like there's like a kind of implicit nobility in that. Like they're the ones that are performing their societal function, and they're like the only ones that can be said to be doing it kind of.
And he tries to give a
right
rational
reasons.
basis for torturing to Dorcas.
Yes. And then like as she just doesn't respond, he's like, okay, well, I'll concede. Yes, maybe what we are doing is terrible, but who else is going to do it? Okay, maybe this doesn't even happen at all. How's society going to function? I don't know. And then at the end, he just kind of apologizes.
You could see Severian and the reader in question knowing the faults in all of his arguments, and you could see it, and it's so easy to tear apart.
It's like, am I supposed to be a judge? Am I supposed to think for myself? Am I supposed to appoint myself a higher power than the autarch's appointed officials? I think not.
Yeah.
And then he sees a dude condemn a woman to death just for sleeping with other men.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's politically inconvenient too.
Yeah.
Not because of any legal basis. Yeah.
Yeah, he even says, right? He's like, this is like, no one gets sentenced to execution for just infidelity, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Good stuff.
The scales fell from his eyes.
Kip, do
Yes.
you believe that
Nice.
Typhon is dead or coming back? Where do you land on that?
I think he's dead.
I just don't buy it.
I think he's dead. I think it really shows how little real power he had.
Yeah. Do you think that Typhon was just kind of just trying to pull the wool over Severian's eyes with the like, I've started processes that have been long sleeping, and I've sent my thoughts far across the world, and now armies
I
are
don't
coming
think so. No.
Yeah,
No,
actually,
I think he was real about that. I think
I
he
think
did.
that rang of truth to me as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he set a bunch of wheels in motion, did some recon, did some exploring, and then thought, "Oh, hey, here's a little boy with a toy sword. He can't hurt me."
Well, and I think if you take what we can prove about him, he is a far-thinking individual. Like,
Mhm.
Also powerful enough to make a mountain out of himself.
yeah, exactly. And so I think
And have
if he's
functioning hibernation equipment.
yeah,
All right.
he's
At
got the
what point?
means and the opportunity.
At what point in the story did you realize that all of the mountains are literally just giant statues?
Right to second.
Oh,
Yeah, there's like no natural soil anymore. It's all the detritus of past civilizations.
all those mountains are just like giant people.
I kind of gather because there's a scene where he's coming down the mountains, right, and then something has collapsed away, and he's talking about there being a statue down there, and there's like some sort of writing on it, but he couldn't make it out, or a mural or something like that. I don't know.
I
Sometimes
remember what
I
you're talking
read.
about, but I forgot what relation to.
It
Well,
comes to
yeah.
Every time I hear about a
just,
mural, I think Spaceman.
yeah. It's just me thinking like about him literally walking on past civilizations, right? You know, he's like up in the highest peaks of whatever, and there's some fall away, and there's some remnants of a civilization. So I guess I just didn't put two and two together.
so
I'll tell you what I think about Typhon and Severian's conversation.
Ooh,
'Cause
yes.
the obvious parallel is the Bible when Satan tempts Jesus in the desert, right?
Yeah.
Using that as a basis, think about what Satan could actually give Jesus and what Satan was trying to achieve with this. And I would just say put it in the spot of Typhon and Severian. And I think that would be my guess.
There was
I
a
get
quote.
It's all bluster. It's not
Lord of
something you can-
Lies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Typhon
I
was one
mean-
of the titans of Greek mythology, right?
I don't remember.
My Greek mythology is a little lacking. I apologize. There's a quote I wanted to from that conversation. I don't know if we can do that, but
Yeah.
so this is Severian talking to Typhon. He says, "You were at the other eye previously, I told Typhon, and they did not honor you then. They salute the claw. Autarch, what of the new son, if at last he comes? Will you be his enemy too, as you are the enemy of the conciliator? Swear to me and believe me, when he comes, I shall be his master, and he my most abject slave." This is one of the lines here that made me think about the parallels between the conciliator and Severian, which is why I'm kind of like, maybe he at least represents one or the other. Anyway,
I'm going to add another biblical parallel to this. I forget who exactly it is in the Bible, but there's an early Bible story. It might be Jacob, where there is an older brother and a younger brother, and the older brother comes home from hunting one day and is hungry, and Jacob tricks him into swearing away his inheritance just for like a bowl of meat, basically. Typhon tries to trick Severian away from his nature, if indeed he's the conciliator, for food.
I don't think that's unintentional.
I think Gene Wolfe absolutely intended that. Yes.
And in a book where so many people are named from saints, yes.
Yep. And I want to highlight this quote from that Typhon said as well. Say rather that your coming awakened me. You thought me dead when I was only dry. I drank, and as you see, I live again. To drink is to live. To be bathed in water is to have a new birth.
Yeah,
Which,
that's a
Water.
great one.
yes, and think to all the times there have been people immersed in water in this story, including Severian. Right?
Yes.
Severian, in some ways, begins the tale with him almost drowning. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
And
would
when
like
he,
to add that most of Severian's encounters with water are with natural water,
yeah,
and Typhon's was a purely artificial source, as far as we can tell.
yeah, that's a good point.
Back to the prison escape, he kind of baptized all of his prisoners while also literally resurrecting many of them.
Yeah, and there's Dorcas, who is scared of water, maybe for this reason. She's reflexively trying to avoid the revelation that she had died.
The lengths that Dorcas goes to avoid water of depth greater than like a thumb is intense, and I
Yes.
do like its repetition.
Yeah. I mean, she's having a
And
lot
yet
of
the book,
memories of drowning potentially, or, however that looks. I would not want to be anywhere near water.
and yet this book opens her with her underneath a waterfall complaining about something in her hair. She was so disgusted that she was willing to literally sit in one of her greatest fears.
I
Yep.
wonder what
She
the
was so
story
disgusted
behind
by
that
what
was.
Severian was doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably it. Yeah.
So there's something I picked up on this. It has to mean something, and I don't know where, but I wanted to ask Ash and Kieran if I'm onto something. But it's like, I'm trying to think. It might be with Typhon, or it's around there, where he talks about the claw being in a sack made of human leather
Human skin, yeah.
or human skin, right?
Was
And I
it?
read that and was like, what?
I thought that was the hilt of Terminus Est. I thought the sack was like deer skin or doe skin.
I
It's
thought
been
it had an
referred to as
explicit.
doe skin and a human skin.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I thought it had
Okay.
mentioned it as doe skin, and I
It's
was
an
like,
inconsistency, and I'm not quite sure what it means.
I think it's an intentional one. I mean, so we get a story here where, okay, well, first of all, the story is a retelling of the origin of Rome, which
is awesome.
but
Hey, wait,
also,
it's not just the retelling of the story of Rome. It's also
No.
Kipling's The Jungle Book, and it's the story of
Frankenstein.
Squanto.
yeah,
So the Squanto bit was out of left field for me, but
but also the wolves in the story are clearly not wolves, right?
Yeah.
They have hands, they're using weapons, they're able to talk, obviously. So what makes them wolves is kind of unclear. But here's another example of animals being conflated with humans and vice versa.
and there was that bit about the most like dangerous animal being a mixture of wolves and dogs.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's the common story and the common knowledge of people. But I wonder what the dangerous union of animals and humans might be, or of wolves and humans.
Mm. I mean, we've already seen some animal-human hybrids, right? There's zoanthropes.
Zoanthropes. The Alzabuk could be said to be.
I'm just
sort of
wondering
a
like
merging
what
between-
exactly the point is, and it would take
Yeah.
a much deeper reading for me to come to any sort of conclusion about it. But
Well, one of the distinctions that's made in the story of Frog is like this is a son of Meschia. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be a son of Meschia, as opposed to simply, I guess, like a human-looking figure that uses weapons and whatnot and is able to reason and debate with other people and love?
I don't know enough. What is that from Zoroastrianism, or is it
I don't know.
Gnosticism?
is it Severian?
Is Severian the author, like the progenitor of all of humanity?
Is Severian Meshia? Yes.
I mean, in the play he is.
I seem to think that like they view animals as non-thinking creatures, as things that just work on instinct, that could create their own will, and often in stories, especially really Christian symbolism laden ones, they would refer to humans as the sons of Adam and daughters of Eve and whatnot. Like we think of
Mhm.
Narnia.
I'm going to push back on that. I don't think they think of animals as non-thinking creatures. I think they think of animals as things that it's okay for the average person to kill.
Maybe. I mean, the wolves clearly in the story clearly think, right?
Yeah. So do various
I
of
don't,
the
I don't think
monsters.
those are mutually exclusive though.
The Alzabo may be thinking
But
in some kind of a way.
Or is
so
it a
if we
Chinese room?
so if we go back to the
Maybe.
story of Genesis, like humans, many people interpret it, the story of Adam and Eve as getting free will, uh, learning about sin and all of these things. That's what makes them human. And before they were just merely creatures. Um, so I think the zoanthropes and these subhuman creatures that Severian keeps talking about, and maybe even in the story there, it's what makes someone truly human is their ability to make choice, and that it's very, very wrong to rob yourself of that, because when you explain the zoanthropes, they're basically people, wolves, right? Like what we
I
say they're wolves.
could not separate the thoughts of zoanthropes from pups.
I just thought of Warhammer 40K.
I need to get into that.
Fair enough. Those are just my
Um,
thoughts. I think what maybe Wolf, maybe Severian, maybe just the world they live in, they view subhuman creatures as just people who have gone to their base instincts, and that's what is the real sin.
maybe it's
They take away
torturers
their
are wolves.
rationality.
Maybe
Maybe.
this is so. I think to contrast this with another very famous sci-fi story, Dune. Like there's a program to separate humans from like the rest, right? Like you have to pass this test to be declared a human. I'm kind of wondering if Gene Wolfe and Frank Herbert were thinking along similar lines in that area.
I think so. I think that's absolutely true. And
And
also they take it to the next level in Emperor of Dune.
so and then this to add another line of thinking here. Like I've said previously in this episode, like Severian is learning how to be human here, but in the story of Frog, it's recognized that he's a human from infancy, basically. So Frog doesn't need to become a human. Frog is already a human, and they need to. So what's the difference there? How is Frog born a human and Severian isn't? Or maybe Severian was always a human, and that humanity was stripped away from him by the torturers.
That works, right? Yeah. And because the torturer's thing is just obey, 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 that takes
Yeah.
away their free will, their ability to make choice.
But and then to add on to this, there is this sense that Severian's actions are first of all being observed by powers greater than himself. And this is reinforced constantly throughout the story. Like Severian thinks he's alone, but he's being watched. He has been watched, for example, by the daughters of Abaya, or the
Yeah,
Hyrule
Mark.
Duels, who are also watching him and seem to know what he's about. But so one example here is the play that, or sorry, the mannequin fight that Severian is exposed to at Shadow the Torturer, which itself gets played out exactly the same at the end of this book, right? Like beat for beat, that's the same story. So what does choice mean in that situation if your actions are known ahead of time?
Hurts
I
my
don't know.
I
brain.
mean, I'm not sure that this book comes down on the side of determinism or not, but it certainly is asking all of those questions.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
I just need
I
to
think
learn
we'll,
more
I think
about the fish.
I think we'll have more to say about that after Earth, or even after the next book.
What do you guys make of the gem of the claw being destroyed and Severian finding the claw itself?
The very end.
I think he's poured too much of the claw out into the world and no longer has protection from it anymore.
Yeah. I don't know.
So, go ahead.
No, I just
Use on him.
it was very intentional that Gene put that at the end and left us there. And
Yes.
I don't know what to make of it yet.
Well, and previously it's like this thing is called the claw, but it's clearly not a claw; it's a gem, right? So what could it mean for it to be a claw? But also, there's this sense of accessing deeper truths and deeper levels of reality that's played out through these books. For example, when the Hyrule Duels take off their mask and then take off that mask. In a sense, the claw is
that is
unmasculine.
drag.
Yeah, there's so much. The deeper we get into this, and I probably will feel this way even more when we finish Citadel, is that I will feel like I'm reading this probably for the first time when I do it the second time.
Yes.
Yeah.
This story is like it feels impossibly deep.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Masks all the way down.
Sometimes I read it and I'm like, some part of me understood that, but 15 other parts of me did not. And so, it just It's interesting.
Yeah.
Severian is growing on me though. I'll say that. I don't know that I would want to, have a cup of tea with the guy, but I
Mm.
think he may be headed in some of the right directions in this story.
I think
It's-
now less than ever would I want to be within a mile of him.
Interesting. And
we have very different opinions on him, I guess, at the end of this book then.
I just think he's a danger.
Oh yeah, there's definitely not awesome things happening around him. Yeah.
Blobs and salamanders.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
then
basically, like the worst that would happen is you get kicked out of a clothing store. Now there's like armies on the march.
yeah, for like unspeakable horrors following along and destroying everyone that's around him.
intergalactic monsters and stuff. Yeah, and
I mean,
that.
like another sense in which things have been revealed that change the context of what came before is like Hathor. He's like he seemed like a kind of pathetic sycophant, right? Previously, and
Yeah.
maybe in a sense he is, and he certainly seems to be getting dominated in some sense by Agia. But at the same time, he's like this kind of beast master that has all these monsters at his command that we didn't know about. We had no idea.
Yeah, and then Baldanders is reframed a lot from the first. The first book. Feels like a pretty sympathetic character. You're like, oh man, like Talos.
Like,
Has this kind of nefarious feel to him. Yeah,
Yeah, he's like a gentle giant.
it was Severian's like best one night stand.
of which he has had many.
Had some weird dreams.
And Baldanders even kind of pollutes our image of him backwards by like saying, "I should have killed you the moment I saw you," basically.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a horrifying thing to say to someone, even if you do end up not liking them, right? And then he gets so violent when he sees when Severian Severian's ideology seems to be clashing with his. It's like I cannot countenance you having faith in this world, you know?
And the reduction of scientific empiricism to I took it from this cabinet or I took it from the drawer.
Yeah.
Only willing to confirm the immediate prior circumstances.
And then there's also like him and Severian's encounter with the Hierodules. Baldanders seems to know at the start that Severian is going to win the confrontation they have, even before the Severian is thinking that there's going to be a confrontation, because otherwise the Hierodules would act differently.
Yeah.
And then yet Baldanders chooses to engage in the confrontation anyways.
This is a part that I still don't understand and probably need to go back and reread. This is kind of off where we were, but the Cacogens and all that stuff, that kind of started getting explained somewhere at the end of Thrax, and it went just clean over my head. I don't have a great idea of who some of these factions are.
Mm-hmm.
The Cacogens are just a derogatory term for aliens.
Yeah.
The Hierodules specifically are the people who are manipulating things beside the scenes, especially when in cahoots with the Autarch and the people who are guiding Baldanders. Or maybe guiding is the wrong word, but they're kind of helping Baldanders, and they're looking and trying to see what technology he's creating and observing him.
I got the feeling that they didn't really like Baldanders,
No.
That they're not a fan of him, but they're for some reason working with him is like a necessary evil to them or something along those lines.
They're interested in humanity flourishing on this planet, or so they say. But they also seem to have some kind of knowledge of the future and of like people's kind of inherent potential. And I think part of what should be thought about is what purpose were they grooming Baldanders to serve? In my opinion, it's so that he can have this confrontation with Severian at this moment.
Yeah.
And then they abandon him to Severian and his to what will happen that Baldanders thinks that they know about.
Interesting. I think that the Autarch is in on that too because of his kind of meeting with Severian and Claw, right? Like you get this sense that he is aware of things in the future, and he's setting up Severian for something, right?
And to add on to even that, as the Baldur's downfall and the attack on the castle is triggered, Severian says, by the only thing that could have motivated Severian to engage in combat with him, growing the claw.
Yeah.
Things
Yeah.
it's like an implausibly perfect circumstance, let's say.
Interesting. I am pretty excited to read the fourth and final book. There's things I want to know.
Yeah.
And
Not to temper your expectations too much. There's a lot of stories.
Yeah. There are. I think some of the best stories too.
I agree, especially the last one.
Oh, and Citadel. Yeah, I like the stories. You're talking about like some of the one-off story chapters we
Yeah,
get.
the stories and
Yeah.
stories. Yeah.
No, I think he does a great job with those.
I
From,
agree.
from what I understand of the making of the Book of the New Sun, is that it was originally a trilogy, and the final book was too long, so they had to cut it in half. And then like the leftover part was too short, and so he added these stories.
I mean,
That's
the whole series has had a kind of episodic feel, and I think we were talking about it on the Discord where I was speculating that, you know, Gene Wolfe was not a full-time writer. You know, the guy was an engineer of some renown.
He eventually became a full-time writer, I think.
Well, yeah, but I don't think he was when he was working on
Oh.
Book of the New Sun. And so you can imagine a guy working a full shift coming home with Severian in his brain, which is just more than I can contemplate, and then knocking out maybe a chapter, you know, over the course of a work week or however long it took him to write. And so some parts of the story have an episodic feel, or they're broken into like little acts, you know, that kind of naturally flow out or are connected with these random stories. But that's been true since, you know, the first book. And it works for me.
Yeah. To me, looking back, it almost feels like the story was written backwards.
I can see it.
I mean, yeah. Again, time is not a straight line in this
I know it's not.
series. I really strongly believe that, and so I'm just dying to know where it ends because I don't know.
I mean,
you know.
that's been clear since the Botanic Gardens.
Yeah. Father and Near's Mirrors. Like, there's all kinds of stuff that say, like, you know, we've got all kinds of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if we have some callbacks to like book one stuff and Citadel specifically, or
I am waiting for the Matachine Tower to fly off into space or explode.
Awesome. And then it becomes the first hegemony ship of Hyperion. No,
I think if anything, Hyperion was an age long past in this series.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Kieran and I kind of talked about this, but again, in this book, it just blows me away how good he is at making me feel like this Earth is old.
Mm-hmm.
It's old and it's seen a lot, and I don't think. I think that's a lot harder to pull off, than it might seem at face value.
Yes, especially considering how relatively short the series is as well.
Yeah,
these are not very long books. Yeah.
And yeah, like it's among the dualities. I think it is that which is old is new, and that which is new is old. It's certainly seen here, right? And something I quite like is at the end of every book, Severian offers the reader a chance of turning away, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, it feels almost like a challenge, right? And kind of like taking him on faith that all this wandering about, this seemingly purposeless wandering, is going to lead somewhere. You know,
I really do wonder how much more I would like Terra Ignota if I had read and loved this series first.
Interesting.
Because Mycroft loves to implore the reader to turn away.
just like a series of unfortunate events.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the same book. Book of the New
Yes.
Sun, series of unfortunate events, you know, really the same quality.
There's only one to
one correlation. This is probably one of the most unique reading experiences I've ever had so far with this series.
Yes.
And I say that in a good way. and sometimes in a bad way. You get to the play and claw, and I'm just, I don't
Oh,
know
that
what's
was my
going on.
favorite part by
I
far.
love it, but it's
Yeah. It's mind bending.
yeah,
Mind
the
bending and frustrating, but I like that.
Well,
mystery, the
and
challenge.
so now that you've encountered the Hyrule duels, does that reframe any of the play in your mind? Or this is actually just me telling you.
No.
Now that you've encountered the Hyrule duels, try thinking about what might be reframed by the play, or what
I need
about
to
the
go. I
play.
might sit down and reread the play. Actually, as wild as that
I
is,
need to
might
do that.
just
I think
sit
I
down
will
and
too
reread.
before I start book 4, or I'll listen
Yeah.
to it.
I'm definitely going to reread this series like in the next couple years, while I still have some like overall finer detailed memory of it.
I mean, thinking about it as a whole is also useful, and not like fixating too much on the details, because you can see connections. I think between
Yeah, this book was rewarding in the sense that I started to feel like I was connecting
things
things.
are starting to click. Yeah. And I think it's also useful to look at the statements Severian is making earlier in the series about reality, and think through how he might have come to those thoughts on his journey here. For example, like the statement about how he thinks that the pattern of his guild is repeated mindlessly across the world. How Baldanders might be is a torturer, right? And he tortures his subjects, and Dr. Talos is a torturer to Baldanders, but it's also the reverse is true. And the Archon is a torturer of his subjects, and so on and so forth. And men are torturing women, as Dorcas says. And then contrast that to maybe how Severian and Paya, is that her name? The slave girl?
Yeah.
Something like
It's
that.
kind of a wholesome relationship. Like, he doesn't actually take advantage of her.
Please sit down.
Yeah, he does. Yes, he does.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not
Yeah.
convinced. He frees her.
He
And
has sex with her.
he has sex with her after she's free, after she's
Oh wow.
among her
Oh
people.
wow.
I don't think that's taking advantage. I think if he had bad intentions, he could have had sex with her before she was able to give consent.
He
I
absolutely had
mean,
the chance.
I believe he would have felt worse about himself then, and he can fool himself into feeling better about himself if he does it after.
Interesting.
But
You think
no,
that
he
was
absolutely
non-consensual?
takes advantage of her.
Or in what way?
And also, not to mention that he makes her drink that wine.
Yeah, she's his poison taster, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is funny because his food was actually poison.
But
He was totally vindicated there.
but it was also disgusting. It was just
No,
bad
see,
wine.
Oh yes, it's just terrible wine. Yeah.
I read that scene differently. I thought he took pity on her, and he was upset by the slavery, her enslavement, and so in treating her like an equal and making her sit down and having her drink the wine, I thought he was taking her into his confidences and saying, "I see you as an equal. I know that they treat you poorly, and I want to share these, I guess, things that you usually can't have together."
He offered her a way of escape as well before, as before he thought he could get anything from her. It's like, oh, if you're thinking of escaping, maybe this is a way, right?
Yeah, real smart dude. She's definitely never thought of anything like that before.
And maybe she hasn't, because she hasn't escaped. Would this have been an effective method of escaping? I don't know, but I think his intentions were good
Meet
there,
a
for the most part.
slave girl. Know that you're being overheard by her enslaver, and then suggest to her openly a method of escape.
In kind of like a roundabout way. Right?
No,
Like the people of the
Directly.
village, the people of the village are not like super geniuses, right?
I believe at that point the guy behind the
I
door had
believe they're
already
water
moved.
people.
The guy behind the door had moved, and maybe that's the case.
No, because
He
she
told
said,
him to move.
yeah, because he was sitting at the door, and she's like,
He didn't
he's gonna
check.
stay there until you take advantage of me, and then he says that he should go. He's like, I'm not gonna do it, so we might as well leave. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think.
I think it was just another instance of Severian being naive, trying to change a pattern that he had identified, seen, and was no longer okay with, and just doing it in a terrible fashion.
I mean, she ends up free, right?
She does.
Yeah.
And you know what? Destiny works in funny ways around Severian.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a series of improbable circumstances that happened.
But
Well,
I don't
seemingly
believe that's
improbable.
a credit to his intellect.
I'm not saying his intellect, I'm saying his character.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, it says a lot about his character.
Yeah.
I fully intend that it says a lot about his character. But part of what I think it says about his character is that he's still super naive.
Oh,
Oh,
yes.
yeah,
In a lot of
definitely.
ways, yes. Absolutely. And like people are talking around him sometimes and he doesn't know what they're saying.
Yep.
You know, like in the Baldanders conversation, he's kind of like wandering and it's just like, what's going on? I don't know what's going on. And then like a series of circumstances happen. He's like, wait, Baldanders isn't my friend anymore? I mean, I'm gonna have to kill this guy.
This man that I think of sleeping with all the time, for even though it only happened once.
He's in a sense he's kind of getting helplessly dragged along by circumstances, eh?
Yeah.
Eh?
Eh?
Yes. I mean, helplessly. I really want to know how much of this is self-fulfilling prophecy, but I won't. I don't think I ever will.
I think that's for you to decide.
This is a
agree.
great conversation to continue after we finish the next book.
If only we could learn what a Pellerine thought about things.
Yeah, that would be nice, eh?
Only.
Well, they're gonna be really sad that their little claw got broke.
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows? Maybe they're the ones who put the glass around there in the first place, and maybe they have a book that shows them how to do it again.
I mean, there's the Mother Superior that they run into says sometimes it's meant for us to lose the claw and it needs to be out in the world for a while.
Yep.
Which is kind of an odd thing. Like if you're guarding this artifact, it's kind of odd to when it's, you know, actually disappearing. What was the point of guarding in the first place, right? If you're just going to accept that it's going to go.
Guard it from idiots, not from its destiny.
And that's why the temple is a tent. So when they blow it up, it creates a symbol in the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
And it just needs to be temporary anyway.
How did you guys like the ending of Baldanders? He goes out to
Tragic. I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced he's dead.
Except the anti-gravity belt. That was weird.
No brain matter, no death. So.
Strange that he goes into the depths where Abaya and all of them are, which is also water, which has been seen as a healing or revivifying symbol in the story so far.
Yes. Well,
Yep. The
and
water is
also
the only
there's-
place where the giants can live.
Yes, that's what I was gonna get at. He's gotten so big at this point, maybe he can't survive anymore on land, and this was like the turning point in his life, right, where he no longer can be on land.
Perhaps.
Especially now that Dr. Talos is gone, he can't regulate his growth anymore.
Mm.
He's gonna have to age like the rest of us.
He can make a new one. He can make a new Talos, right?
Yeah, maybe he can make a new Talos. Yeah.
But his experiments did not seem to be going perfectly well.
No. And there is a question raised, like he said the Hierodules would never tell him things, only ask him questions that that would lead him down certain areas of inquiry.
Yeah.
How did they know that? How did they know their conclusions he would arrive at?
Yeah, no. Teachers never ask questions.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we'll get more Baldanders. I just feel like we have to.
We might. I'm fully willing to concede that no brain matter, no death is a rule that applies in this series less than others, but lots of brain matter can still imply no death in this series.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he's dead anyway. He just jumped in the water.
Well,
Very, very slowly.
drowning.
But he
is a
had
thing.
taken like spears and like numerous weapon injuries.
Mhm.
But he is a large man. He might recover.
And I think it's interesting how in the fight there is Severian knows what the kind of monstrosities the villagers are fighting are, but perhaps this is a deeper truth to reality that these masses should not be exposed to. It would just be unhelpful for them. Severian
At
seems
least
to
in the
know
moment.
truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least in the moment, or maybe ever, right? Maybe it's just better for the people to believe that they were fighting actual monsters rather than their own sons and daughters and husbands and wives.
I imagine that they would, after the battle was over, start to realize things. Because I can't imagine they're not going to loot the place.
Yeah, they probably would.
Who knows?
They need metal.
They do like metal, yeah. At the very least, they probably want to help Paya with their chains, right? Finally have tools they can use to remove them.
Natrium.
Natrium?
Yeah. What they called sodium.
Oh, yes.
Right.
It was yeah.
Like the shells.
Which I would never want to carry around on a boat. Never.
No, right? It's just insane to do that.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I got nothing. I'm just excited to read the fourth book and see.
Yeah, take us out, Kieran.
Okay. That has been our talk on Gene Wolfe's The Sword of the Lictor. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be kind to us. Please join us in the Legendarium Discord server. That has been all of us. Jingle Punks wrote the music. Thanks, Greg. Thanks, everybody else. I am here in Fan, and goodbye.
Good night.
Later,
Good
everyone.
night.